We all grew up believing Harry Potter was the chosen one, the hero, the boy who defied death and defeated evil with love, loyalty, and bravery. But what if I told you that wasn't the full story? What if the truth about Harry's life, the parts the Ministry, Hogwarts, and even Dumbledore kept buried, was darker, more disturbing, and more tragic than anything you've heard in fairy tales? Today we're going beyond the surface. These are the top 5 darkest secrets about Harry Potter that they never taught at Hogwarts. Let's begin with the most terrifying fact of all. Harry wasn't just connected to Voldemort, he was a piece of him. Not metaphorically, literally. After Voldemort's killing curse rebounded, a piece of his mutilated soul latched onto the only living thing in that room, baby Harry. For 17 years, Harry unknowingly carried that fragment inside him. It wasn't just a scar, it was a living horcrux. This explains the voice in his head, the Parseltongue, the rage, the dreams of corridors and blood. The darkness that occasionally flickered in his eyes wasn't just trauma. It was Voldemort's essence whispering through his soul. Even Dumbledore admitted that Harry had to die, not just to stop Voldemort, but to destroy the soul fragment lodged inside him. That's the horrifying truth. Harry's death wasn't optional. It was necessary, and he walked willingly into it, unaware that part of him had never been fully human. Next, let's talk about something even the films gloss over. Harry Potter used unforgivable curses. The same curses that sent Bellatrix Lestrange to Azkaban. The same curses Voldemort used without mercy. In Deathly Hallows, Harry uses Crucio, the torture curse, on Amicus Carrow. Not out of desperation, but out of rage. He wanted him to suffer. Then just pages later, he uses Imperio, the mind control curse, on goblins and wizards inside Gringotts, forcing them to help break into one of the most secure vaults in the magical world. The law is clear, these spells are illegal. They earned life sentences in Azkaban. But Harry, he walked free, celebrated, rewarded. The war excused it. But does that mean he's innocent? Or just protected by the same corrupt system that failed Sirius Black and countless others? Harry crossed moral and magical lines, and no one dared question him. And then there's how many times Harry nearly died before he even faced Voldemort in the final battle. We're not talking close calls, we're talking actual death experiences. At just 1 year old, he survived the Avada Kedavra, something no wizard in history had ever done. At 11, he was nearly murdered by Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest. In Chamber of Secrets, he was minutes from dying after being bitten by the basilisk, poison that would have killed any normal student. And if Fawkes hadn't appeared out of nowhere with healing tears, Harry would have been just another name on a memorial wall. In Goblet of Fire, he was nearly murdered by a portkey trap. In Order of the Phoenix, his mind was being invaded, torn open and manipulated by Voldemort, breaking the barriers of sanity. Every book, every year, he faced death and walked away. Why? Because he was protected? Or because the fragment of Voldemort's soul inside him made him harder to kill? We'll never know. But one thing's certain. Harry Potter survived more fatal encounters before his 18th birthday than most Aurors do in a lifetime. And here's the most devastating part. Dumbledore knew all of it. The man who raised Harry for war, mentored him like a grandfather, and played the long game with every piece on the board. He knew Harry was a horcrux. He knew that Harry would have to die, and he never told him. In fact, he manipulated him from the very beginning, leaving him with the abusive Dursleys to keep him humble, isolating him emotionally so he'd be easier to guide, and feeding him just enough truth to keep him fighting, but never enough to see the full picture. Harry wasn't just a student, he was a weapon, raised and trained to die at the right time. And Dumbledore, for all his wisdom and mercy, let it happen. The sad truth? Harry's victory came at the cost of his own childhood, his innocence, and almost his soul. And finally, here's the darkest secret of all. Harry Potter was the true master of death, and he chose to let it all go. After uniting the Deathly Hallows, the Invisibility Cloak, the Resurrection Stone, and the Elder Wand, he had in his hands more magical power than anyone since the Peverell brothers. He could have ruled. He could have rewritten the laws of life and death. But he dropped the stone, buried the wand, and walked away from it all. Why? Because he was afraid. Afraid of becoming the next Voldemort. Afraid that too much power would change him. He had already seen what it was like to be part dark, to carry evil inside him, to nearly lose himself. And so he did the one thing Voldemort never could. He let go. But that decision came not from peace, but from trauma. Because when you've lived half your life as a horcrux and the other half as a soldier in a war you never chose, You don't dream of power, you dream of rest. But surviving the war didn't mean the darkness ended for Harry, it just changed form. After Voldemort's fall, the wizarding world celebrated Harry like a messiah, a living myth. Statues were erected, books were written. Every child in Diagon Alley wanted to shake his hand, or hear the tale of how he walked into the forest and came back from death itself. But no one, not even Ron or Hermione, could truly understand what he had sacrificed. The war ended, but the trauma never did. Harry lived every day with phantom echoes in his mind. The horcrux was gone, but the mental scarring remained. Voldemort may have died, but Harry still heard whispers in the dark. Still woke up drenched in sweat from nightmares of Cedric's lifeless body, of Sirius falling through the veil, of Dumbledore's broken frame tumbling from the astronomy tower. The irony: Harry saved the world, but he wasn't even allowed to talk about what it cost him. He was offered no magical therapy, no grief counseling, just a pat on the back and a front row seat at funerals. The boy who lived became the man who suffered in silence, expected to move on as if nothing had happened. And what about his place in the world post-war? The Ministry of Magic praised him, promoted him, and even tried to mold him into a face of reform. But behind closed doors, some feared him. He was the only person to have ever mastered the Elder Wand without corruption, the only one to survive being a horcrux, a child soldier who had walked through death and come back wielding all three hallows. Was he a savior or a potential threat? Some insiders, particularly older pureblood families, believed Harry might someday become what he fought against. That's why, despite all his service, Harry was never allowed real power. He became an Auror, yes, but he was always watched, subtly, quietly, as if the Ministry wasn't sure whether to thank him or prepare to contain him. And maybe that was justified. After all, Harry had broken almost every rule of magical society. He'd led a student army, destroyed sacred artifacts, fought against government officials, used unforgivable curses, and even robbed Gringotts with a dragon. These weren't the acts of a well-behaved wizard. They were the actions of someone who had nothing left to lose. And still, Harry carried on. He married Ginny, raised a family, tried to give his children the kind of peace he never had. But even there, the scars showed. In The Cursed Child, we see a man struggling to connect with his son, Albus, a man still haunted by the shadow of prophecy and the fear that his legacy might curse the next generation. He tries to be a father, but his trauma makes him strict, guarded, distant. The war left him a hero, yes, but it also left him afraid. Afraid of repeating the past, afraid that he might be the reason another war begins. And who could blame him? The man watched friends die. He was betrayed by mentors, raised in abuse, burdened with destiny, then resurrected to become a symbol. How does anyone live a normal life after that? And that's the final tragedy of Harry Potter. While the wizarding world moved on, healed, and rebuilt, he never truly could. Because for Harry, every hallway echoes with memories. Every spell reminds him of pain. And every time someone says thank you, he remembers that he was never given a choice. Because that's the darkest secret of all. Harry Potter didn't want to be the chosen one. He didn't want glory, fame, or statues in his name. He just wanted to be a kid, to have a family, to feel safe. But fate, prophecy, and Voldemort robbed him of all that before he ever got to live it. And in the end, though he won the war, the cost was everything else. So next time someone tells you that Harry's story is a triumph, look closer, because behind the lightning scar and the legend is a boy who was chosen to die, used as a weapon, and left to carry the weight of a war no one else could bear. And that, the pain, the survival, the unbearable truth, is the part they never taught you at Hogwarts.